Astral projection is our natural born ability to consciously project our awareness out of our physical bodies into different realms and explore the world beyond the physical limitations. This awareness is commonly referred to as the energy body, and we are able to use this energy body as a vehicle to travel and explore the universe, and we can safely return our energy body back to our physical body whenever we want, just by thinking about it.
Hello everybody, welcome to this live. I'm here with Matt. Matt is my team member. Hello Matt.
Hello everybody.
I met Matt back in the days, I don't know how many years it was now, 10, at a festival in Hungary. And I was high on LSD, and then I meet Matt, who's also high on LSD. Do you remember that moment?
I do. I love how psychedelics can create kind of like psychedelic synchronicities. You know, it's like, and in those moments, you actually get to see each other fully. So I felt like when I met you, I knew there was some sort of connection. I didn't know what it was going to be, how it was going to manifest, but like 10 years later, here we are. So yeah, it was a magical moment for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was really interesting because we talked about, we met and we talked about all kinds of interesting topics, as you would do if you're high on acid at a psytrance party, which is all about consciousness exploration and music and all that. And yeah, we're just connected instantly, and we had a connection that lasted for quite some time. And it's interesting because psychedelics, yeah, like you said, it connects you with lots of interesting people. And especially when you are on it, when you meet somebody and you have that, like when you actually have that conversation with them, you conversate with them on a different level. It's a whole different level of conversation. It's not the normal, hey, what you're doing, how's your job, what do you do for a living, you know, where do you live? It's like much more psychedelic and interesting. And it gets really deep, really fast. And that's what I like about psychedelics. And for those of you that don't know, that was my journey when I started, my spiritual journey started with psychedelics. I was experimenting with all kinds of different tools, like LSD, like ayahuasca, mushrooms. And that was, for me, that was the way to explore consciousness in the beginning. It was like the only way that I knew. And it was very interesting because it's psychedelics is a very interesting, very, very good way to start, I think, for some people. Now, not for everybody, but for me, it was definitely interesting because I was a skeptic to a lot of these things. And when you have a psychedelic experience, it shows you undoubtedly a world that you cannot say is just happening in your mind. It's such an interesting experience that the things that you see really makes you start questioning what is reality.
I think it's like,
yeah,
I think it's like, it adds like a knowing, you know, like when you have that experience, like obviously people always talk about the visuals and of a psychedelic journey, you know, oh, what did you see? But actually it kind of like, you know, it changes you. Once you've opened that box, the lid doesn't go back on. You will always know from that point that there's something so much bigger. Like I started my journey with magic mushrooms, and you know, it was a hard experience to understand. It took me years actually to kind of understand that experience. But then later on, I tried LSD, and once I did LSD, it was like, wow, like I'm not in the universe, I'm actually part of the universe. And as soon as I had that understanding, my whole life changed. I saw everything totally differently. So yeah, for me as well, it was my opening to consciousness exploration as well.
Yeah, and I like what you said about that. There's this knowing, because it's not just about what you see. It's when you're seeing things, but at the same time you get this knowing, you get this understanding of these deeper truths, which for the most part, when you come out of the trip, is very difficult to explain to anybody. Oh, I felt one with the universe.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm talking about, man? like I was one with everything. People look at you like, right, yeah, that sounds so cliche and cheesy, and don't know what you're talking about. It's like one of those things you have to actually experience it to understand those kind of experiences.
It's very much like astral projection, you know, like when you try and explain to someone what an out of body experience is like, you know, like the amount of people I talk to, and, you know, they'll have read it in the books. They'll have read like 20 books about it. They've watched loads of YouTube stuff on it. And yet it's still intellectual, you know, they're kind of like looking through the glass at the experience. Whereas when you actually have the experience, it's like, boom, you know you're a multi-dimensional being, and that you're non-physical, and that literally cascades throughout every aspect of your life from that point, you know. So it's like, you know, really, I think obviously it's great to research these things, but actually to do them is where you really start to make the changes in your life.
Yeah, and full disclaimer, we're not advertising any psychedelics on this workshop. But we're going to talk about the different experiences that you can have, that we've had, along with astral projection experiences as well, and the differences and everything alike. And actually, at this point, I would be interested to find out if you guys that are watching right now, have you guys had any astral projection or had any psychedelic experience, or maybe you've had none of these experiences? Can you write it in the comments field? Just write down like, hey, I've had one or a few astral projections, or I've had psychedelic experiences like mushrooms, or maybe you have no experience. Just write no experience whatsoever. It'll be interesting for us to see, you know, what you guys have been doing. Okay, I see some shrooms here. Danielle.
LSD, shrooms, one none.
LSD shrooms about 20 times. I see here. Universe contributes them. So, oh, interesting. None. Okay. I think more comments will come through.
Mushrooms and LSD again, yeah. No experience so far. Always interested, but oh, okay, here they're coming in. A few astral projections, no psychedelics. Boyfriend and I back in the 60s were both high in LSD. We looked at each other and went, yuck, split up after. That's a funny story. Ayahuasca, Yopo, quite a lot of peyote, Watruma, handful of astral projections, brilliant. OBE, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I see we have quite a few of our students here as well. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hey,
so
all.
Nice to see students joining the workshop as well. Cool. All right, so I think at this point we can just talk a little bit about the differences between astral projection and psychedelic experiences. Sometimes people might think they're quite similar. A lot of times I have had calls with people and they think it's very similar. How would you describe it, Matt?
Well, you know, I think just as a caveat, nothing is impossible and everyone's experience is unique. You know, that is the beautiful thing about consciousness. It is ever expanding and it is infinite. However, we can look at across the board, especially in my own life. I've been using psychedelics now for probably, 18 years. And especially about 5 or 6 years ago, I was using them very regularly and doing a lot of, deep inner work with them. And, traditionally people would talk about things like magic mushrooms, and magic mushrooms definitely can take you out of your body. However, the places that you go on the magic mushrooms, again, are going to be different to the places that you go on LSD. And there might be some overlap, and the same with ayahuasca, same with iboga. But broadly speaking, they're all kind of unique. They almost take you to their own specific spaces. And one of the clearest ways of seeing this is through DMT. So, for example, with DMT, what you find is a lot of people have very alien experiences. And and very non-physical experiences as well. You know, there's a whole range in all of these psychedelics, but what's a kind of resounding thing is that, for example, something that I've recently had with my own astral projection practice is I recently had my first shared astral projection where me and my partner were practicing the direct method together, and we got out of body. We didn't tell each other what we were planning to do, and when we got out of body, she just put her hand on my hand, laid on top of me, and gave me a hug. It was really simple, but really beautiful. The energy was profound. It felt like full-on Kundalini going through my body. It was absolutely incredible, very healing and nurturing. And when I came back, I said to her, I said, "What did you experience?" She said, "Oh, nothing much. You know, I got out of my body, but I just sent you some love and gave you a hug." And for me, that experience was as real as this experience. You know, I could literally feel her hand, but she did not touch me in the physical. Now, I've never, ever been able to have that experience on a psychedelic. And trying to have an experience which is replicable, you know, like where I might be able to go to the same place, the same destination. I might be able to use my own intuition to guide the experience. All of those things are not very accessible on psychedelics, and I have done a lot of research in this area. Whereas with astral projection, you actually find that you can control the experience. You can have shared experiences, and you can actually go to specific places more than once. How about you, Flo? What have you found out?
Yeah, I mean, what I found is that with the astral projection in general, I have more control. It's less. It's not like an intense roller coaster ride that I have no control over. Especially if we talk about things like we talk about Bufo, Alvarius, or DMT, normal DMT if you smoke DMT, or any of these very strong things that really takes you on a very powerful journey. Like it's really once you smoked it, it's like you cannot control it. You cannot just decide what's going to happen. If you try to control these psychedelics, you'd usually have a bad experience. You have to just completely let go, and you have to really be trusting that you can just let go and let the universe do its thing. Let the substance just take you on whatever journey that you are meant to have in that moment. And the moment you try to control it and you try to hold on to the reality that you're in, trying to hold on to your identity, your ego, all of these things, then the trip can get really difficult. It can get really bad. And that's how usually a bad trip starts for people. And so one of the things I had to learn is how to take psychedelics and then surrender fully, so that even though I'm having a very intense experience, I'm able to go with it without having a sort of a difficult experience. I'm just completely letting go. And it's interesting because I'm using a very similar technique that I'm using in the astral projection practice of surrendering completely. I have used many times with psychedelics. And it's something that came about in a difficult mushroom trip that I had, where I really felt like everything was just getting really difficult and dark. And every thought I would think about was like negative, and started to have this sort of kind of like a panic attack on the psychedelic, which is one of those bad trips that you don't want to have, generally speaking. But the moment I realized that I couldn't do anything about it, I just had to completely surrender. That's feeling of surrender then took me to this more blissful state where I was getting some understandings about how we're we hold on to safety and control a lot, and we have to let go because we live in a universe where everything is like we're on a spinning rock in space right now. There's not much control that we really have. We think we have it, but in the end of the day, we were born here without control, and we're going to die here without control. It just happens. Like I'm talking about our human control that we think we have. And so the surrendering part is very key with both practices, but the control part is very different. So with an astral projection, you can decide when you get out of body what you're going to do. where you're going to go. I think so. Just to illustrate a bit more about the differences, I think it helps to just kind of talk about what you actually experience. So for me, and of course it's different, but for most people, I would say when we talk about psychedelics, it's usually something to do with crazy colors and fractals moving towards you at really fast speeds. It's hard to kind of look at one thing because it just changes as you're looking at it. And it's like opening up in multidimensional colors and shapes. And you're just kind of really confused. You don't really know what you're seeing for the most part. And sometimes you can get more clear visions. But from my personal experience, it's been really hard to get very kind of solid things to look at that I can understand on psychedelics. But on an astral projection, for example, if I share one of my experiences that is very physical. So you'll be lying down with an intention that you're going to go to body, and you probably also have a plan of where you want to go. So in this case, my plan was to get a body and just visit my neighborhood. And so, after, an hour in the practice, laying there in my bed, I start to get to vibrational state. I start to feel like I'm dissolving. And then I know that's my cue, that I have to now exit my body. I roll out to the right, and now I float to the right, and I'm feeling this flotation feeling. I'm feeling like I'm floating to the right, and then I'm kind of floating down to the floor, and I'm feeling that my energy body feet are now touching the surface of the carpet. And I used to have this very furry carpet, and I can feel this furry texture on the carpet with my astral feet. It's just nice. I'm like, okay, I know I'm on the carpet because I can feel the carpet, and I can sense that I've moved. Now, I don't have any vision, and that's usually very common with out-of-body experiences, that for the first minute or so, when you get out of body, it's just dark. You don't see anything, but you have other senses that you can navigate with. It's a bit like walking around like you're a blind person, and you're kind of like just touching things to see where you are. You can feel things. So at this point, I'm feeling the carpet that I'm on. I'm also grabbing hold of the side table of my bed, and I can feel the solid texture of this material. It's like it's in the physical, it's a rock, and I like one of those rock tables, and I know I'm not in the physical, so I know that this shouldn't supposed to be that solid. So as I'm feeling this, I'm also like pushing my fingers through it, and I can feel how my fingers are now penetrating this rock solid object in the physical, but now kind of like a bit like I would say gelatin or something in the non-physical dimension that was appearing in that moment. And then I can also feel like I can pull this table, and I can kind of twist and turn it, and I can like stretch it out into different shapes in the air. Still not able to see anything. And I tried to then get my vision to work, but this experience was early days. Like I didn't know how to get my vision to work immediately. And so what I had to do was I just, well, in that moment, now I know that I have to get away from the body. In that moment, I didn't know what I had to do. So I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm not seeing anything, but I can feel things. So I was just touching things in my room. Very physical, everything. And then I decided that I want to get out of get out of the room that I'm in. So I just kind of move myself to the edge of the window, and I pull my both hands on the side of the window frame, and I pull myself through the window, and I can feel how the glass of the window is now penetrating my whole body like a thin layer. And then I'm pushing myself out, and I'm now outside of the room, outside of the window, floating above. And I can now hear the sounds from outside very clearly. I can feel the temperature. I can sense with my hands the wood frame of the window. And then I start to kind of like slowly just do like this. So I'm kind of climbing down, kind of floating and climbing down at the same time. Because when you're out of body, you don't really have gravity in the same way. So you don't fall. Like you just kind of float very softly. And I float down to the ground. It's like a grass and bushes outside. And once I get there, I'm like, okay, now I really need to have vision, because I don't know this space. I know I'm in my garden, but I don't know much more. So I start to do these commands, awareness now, vision now, clarity now, these classical commands. My vision starts to appear, and it doesn't just appear, but it becomes super, super super visual, super vivid. Like all the colors are super strong. I'm seeing all the details of the plants, the grass, very vivid, strong colors. And in the moment, I didn't really notice why. I'm going to come back to it later why I was seeing it this way, but I was seeing it more vivid than I would see normal reality. And so then I turn around and I look at the road that's in front of my house, and I see these boys that are on a bicycle, and they're just cycling past. And I just had a thought that I want to head over there and see these boys closer up. And immediately I just started to float, and I was just there next to them. Like really quickly, I was just hovering next to these boys, and I was kind of in front of them, but they could not see me. And then I was like, okay, I guess they can't see me. I'm like a ghost or something for them. Let me see what they look like close up. So I go closer to this one boy's face, and when I look really close to his face, what I could see was that his face looked slightly different. Like the way I would see the face was different. And especially the eyes, the iris of the eyes wasn't dark, like black. Like we have irises that are just black, and that's because there's no light that comes in there. So we have light sources like the sun, other lights that doesn't come inside of the eye, and that's why it's dark, it's black. But this boy, his iris was white, and I now understood why everything looked so different. It was because I wasn't seeing things with an external light source like the sun. I was seeing things with the light sources of every single atom or cell in this reality that was facing with. So this boy's face, every single cell on his body was lit, and the eyes were also lit from within. So that's why they was white, and that's why these plants and the grass and everything was so vividly colored, because there was no shadows. Everything was super bright. It was like light everywhere.
Wow.
And yeah, it was so vivid and so much fun. And again, I had full control over what I was doing. It wasn't taking me on a crazy roller coaster ride that I couldn't say no to. I was in control of everything that was happening. And it was all happening at my pace. I was saying, okay, now I want to do this. Now I want to go to this direction. Now I want to do this. And I was just moving around, just like the same way that the physical reality is, where you can decide what to do and what to do next. And if I wanted to, I could also end it, which is another big thing. I could have just said, you know what, I want to return back to my body now, and make that intention, which will then stop the experience completely. And that's one of those things that it's very difficult with psychedelic experience. When you're in the psychedelic experience, you'll have to, if it's an LSD or whatever it is, like you have to be with it for 12 hours. And if you don't like it, you're going to have to go with it for that time. And so that was that experience. And it's really interesting. This actually makes me think about when I was, it's funny because the end of this experience was actually quite funny, because what happened was I realized that these kids couldn't see me, and I was floating around. And then I thought, I wonder if they can hear me. So then as I was this close to this boy, I was like, hello. And the boy freaked out. He was like, I just stopped, and I looked around, told his mates, like, there's something here, like super spooked out. So I think I probably scared a few people in that way, not intentionally. But yeah, like when we are projecting, we are a little bit like a ghost. Like we're invisible to most normal people's vision. They cannot see us. Sometimes for some reason they can hear us. I don't understand how that works, but they cannot see us. Some people that are clairvoyant, they can see people, and some people can feel this as well, which reminds me of a student that we have, Jeff, who was sharing one of his story, which I'm going to play right now, actually.
And then the experience continued on. I ended up going downstairs to my living room. I have a rail on. I slid down there like a little kid, went down there, and I went out the window. And then I ended up in I went out my living room window in it was it's like a door, actually. It's a door. It's a glass door, like a French door. And I ended up someplace I didn't even know where I was. I ended up in somebody's room with a monkey in a cage, and it was a bedroom. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? You know, I got to get out of here. I don't know who this place is, right? So I could hear somebody come up the stairs. I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I went through the door, and I was going down the stairs. These two guys coming up the stairs, and I whooshed right by them, like, and one looked at the other and said, "Did you feel that?" Like a ghost. They could feel my presence moving by them as they would come up the stairs. It was really kind of cool. I wasn't trying to scare them or anything, but that was an experience.
Yeah.
That was a long experience. It was very vivid, and it was pretty cool. But it all happened because you coached me into saying, just do it. Just do it. Don't be afraid. Just do it. And I finally did. And it was, after the D method, I went to bed and I started vibrating. Probably about 10 minutes right after. It happened like quick.
Wow.
Nice.
I love Jeff's story, man. It's so good. Like like when you have those experiences, that's the knowing. He's literally like, you can't make that stuff up, because when you have those experiences, it changes you. And I think that's the value in all of these experiences. But obviously with astral projection, actually be able to, go into that and actually have, like he said, it was a long experience, like your experience. I was talking to someone the other day, and actually this is something that's come up, and I've had this myself actually, and I'm sure some people in the chat who've had some psychedelics experiences. What we tend to do is we tend to copy and paste the states we get to on psychedelics, and then we actually put that over to what we expect to experience with an out-of-body experience that's through practicing and through a conscious experience that we've gone to without psychedelics. And actually the guy I was chatting to, he had a lot of fear, because he was like, when I was on the psychedelic, it was really intense. I did get out of my body, but it wasn't pleasant. And I think a lot of people can feel that, so I think psychedelics can be helpful to kind of open the door, open people's mind to what is possible. But they can also have a double edge to that, which you may end up then actually expecting it to be a similar experience, whereas it's not. With an astral experience, if you get scared, you can just go back to your body. Whereas when you're on DMT and you're out of your body, you can't get back. That's not something you have access to. So, they are different in that regard as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you're going to share a story about that a bit later. That's going to be super interesting for people to to hear. And also, for you guys, if you wanted to book a call with us and talk about your, if you wanted to go into our programs and learn how to astral project, you can actually click this link below the video, and we can have a conversation and see how that goes. Now, I want to go back and talk a little bit about the differences again, but also let's focus on the next thing, which is basically, can we have an out-of-body experience on psychedelics if we mix them up now? And the first thing that comes to mind for me is, can you astral project on psychedelics? Because sometimes, like as a practitioner, we always think about, okay, how can I improve my practice? How can I get out of body more often? Can I take mushrooms or LSD or these other substances to help me get out of body easier, more consistently? And what I can say is that based on my experience, that is not going to help you very much, because when you have, let's say, mushrooms or let's say LSD in your body, you're going to have a high pulse. Your mind is going to race. You're going to think all kinds of thoughts. There's going to be so much happening with your physical body. If you try to lay down and silence your body so that you can have this out-of-body experience, it's going to be very difficult. For the most part, you're going to be, your physical body is going to be so active that it's going to be very difficult to put it to sleep. And when we astral project, it's all about putting the physical body in this sort of offline state where it's just sleeping, while your consciousness is able to then move past that and separate. And so in my experience, to actually do the astral projection practice on a substance, that has not been a helpful way to get out of body. I know that some people experienced out of body experiences doing the practice on weed, and that they found that helped them to relax. But then, if you are able to relax on weed and you're able to get out of body, the problem with weed is that your memory is going to be suffering. You're going to have less control. You're going to be affected by the weed. You're not going to be as conscious and pure as you are when you're sober doing this. So that's my experience when it comes to doing the practice on psychedelics. What about you, Matt? What would you say about?
Yeah, I think I agree with that, really. I've had, especially very early on when I was using cannabis, I definitely had experiences where I was able to kind of float around my body, but I couldn't get out. It was almost more like shamanic journeying, and again, people who are into kind of shamanic journeying, that's a question I think a lot of people also have, which is like, is that different? And from my experience, it is different, because same with remote viewing, because astral projection is literally like you are there. It is very, if you've had a lucid dream, it's very much like a lucid dream, except the world around you isn't constantly shifting. Things are a lot more stable. You do have a lot more control. So with cannabis, again, I've got to certain points, but it's not reliable. Amanita muscaria, that's quite an interesting one. It's very relaxing, and again, I think what you're saying is totally right. Is that you want to relax the body, and almost most of the things we do, if they relax our body that much, they also relax our consciousness, and they relax our awareness. So the times when I was actually having experiences with cannabis, I had some really profound lucid dreams, but the lucid dream was actually almost kind of interwoven with cannabis's spirit. So what actually happened was I'd find myself unable to move properly. I'd find myself where I'd become lucid, but then I couldn't control the experience because it literally felt like I was drugged in the dream. So yeah, that it's there's a lot that goes into having a successful astral projection, and obviously your consciousness and your ability to regulate your excitement, your fear, your intention, all of that is really, really very subtle stuff. And it's not to say that psychedelics don't have any value and they can't help you just generally expand your consciousness and kind of get to some new levels of awareness, but actually practicing them together. The only one that I've ever got, again, they're all journeys in the sense that you're being taken somewhere. You're not guiding it. And obviously you can have that with astral projections as well, but you can actually also have astral projections where you are the one making choices, and you control that. So yeah, I think I agree with you really there, Flo.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything that you said. I'm curious about, so we talked about how it is to try to astral project, so doing the practice on psychedelics, doing the out-of-body practice, the way we do it. But then there is another way which people have had out-of-body experiences, and that's been through taking the substances, right? And then they're literally ejected out of their body, right?
Yeah.
Do
So you want me to talk about my DMT experience?
Talk about your DMT experience.
Yeah. So I was, as most people who kind of learn about DMT, you get to a certain point where the fear and excitement kind of collide, and your excitement takes over, and you're like, this is it, I'm going to do it. and I got an amount. I was doing what I was meant to be doing, and I was kind of taking baby steps. And I kind of took a few baby steps, and I thought, you know what, this is it. I just want to get out. I just want to have a breakthrough, and the breakthrough almost became, it became the be all and end all. There was nothing more important for me in those 2 weeks than breaking through. So kind of, as people do, you just up the dosage, and lo and behold, it worked. And it was on the out breath that I heard the at which point I shot out of my body at a great speed. So it would literally be like being rocketed through dimensions to a point where I ended up in this very dark kind of black space. And as far as I was concerned, I realized in that moment that I couldn't breathe, that I wasn't breathing, that I had no capacity to breathe. I had no physical body at all. And I couldn't get back either. So, it's obviously a lot of people have similar types of experiences. This is a classic ego death. And in that moment, it felt like an eternity. And, that's a really hard thing to explain to someone that you experienced eternity. But it feels very much like that. And the kind of the anguish and the kind of difficult feelings that you would have when you realize and you actually spend a great vast amount of time away from your physical life, who you thought you were, what you thought was real, obviously can be quite challenging. So in that moment, there's this kind of it was like cubes, and they were all stacked on top of each other, and it was kind of like a liquid metal, and that was the being, or the only other thing in the space. And it said to me that I couldn't go back, because obviously as soon as I got there, I was like, okay, yeah, I've really done it this time. This is it. Maybe I could just go back now. I'm ready to go back. I've touched the void. Let's go home. And it was said like, no, you can't go back. This is it. At which point, that's when the eternity just happened.
So was it the cube said? This cube thing said you cannot go back. You have to be here forever.
Yeah. You're here now. This is it. This is your reality. And you're not going home. Essentially, from your perspective, you're dead. And I was like, whoa, okay. At which point, I suffered. I struggled against it. Obviously, you're talking about surrender, massively important. But at that point, I didn't feel like surrender was my first emotion. It was more like upset, pain. Like, what had I left behind? I felt ashamed that I'd kind of wasted my life, and that I'd kind of just in this kind of egotistical moment, running, chasing after this breakthrough, that I'd let go of what was actually a blessing. That physical life is a blessing. So, and then what happened was I finally surrendered. I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, you know what? Fine, I can't suffer any longer. If this is what it's going to be, this is what it's going to be. At which point, everything shifted, and they said, okay, you can go back now. And there was a bit of time kind of in the limbo, kind of just feeling kind of like the gravity of the whole situation. And then I literally just came back to my body. And even weeks later, my partner, we were driving down the motorway together, and she said, oh, look, Matt, there's this new DMT artwork. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I just looked at it. And as soon as I saw it, tears just started flooding like out of my eyes, and my whole body felt the emotion, because it was so deep. The experience was so, shaken me to my core, that, yeah, it was profound. And I was grateful for it, because it helped me, realize just how precious this life is. And that actually, to some degree, a lot of psychedelic explorers like myself and Flo, and, I'm sure you guys out there, we are trying to almost, look for something else. Whereas these experiences tend to always show you what a blessing this life is. So yeah, that was it was a powerful experience for sure.
Wow, thanks for sharing that, man. So it's crazy. So you're stuck there, and
Yeah,
you probably panicking, thinking, shit, I can't go back. I'm stuck here now in this DMT realm. You wanted to go back, but you couldn't go back, right? So
yeah,
I would say that's one of, just at that point, that's a big difference between having an astral projection experience that maybe isn't pleasant. You're somewhere you don't want to be, and you
it's
want to
not.
be. I mean, if you in this case you had a DNT experience, but if you had an astral projection experience instead, and you were in a place where you didn't want to be, uh, you could return by just mentioning, just saying to yourself that you want to return. In this case, with this DNT experience, you were unable to return back to your body, and you were then stuck there.
Yeah,
And then the moment that you gave up, the moment that you surrendered to the experience, like, okay, well, I guess this is it. I'm just going to accept my fate, living here forever. That's when you were able to return,
yeah,
and then you were back.
yeah. I was
So,
back.
what would you say was the deep lesson in that experience that you have?
Always be ready to surrender. Don't take this life for granted. And that like obviously that's not an experience you run towards. A lot of people, a lot of people do run towards it. I was that guy running, begging for that experience, and it's only when you really have that experience that you realize, the gravity of something like that. And it's like I
Yeah,
was with my partner in a room. We'd been together for like 5 years by that point, and I'd never felt so naked, you know. And obviously, when you have those experiences, like I've had, other experiences where like I've collapsed duality, and when you then try to actually integrate that into your life, like go to work or have a conversation about surface level bullshit, you know, it's very fucking hard. It's very hard to actually, when you talk to your mum or your dad after an experience like that, because it's so out of your control. Whereas what I've found, and don't get me wrong, it's not like I didn't receive healing from that and I didn't learn and grow from it. But like when you have an astral projection, and you have your first flying experience, there's no integrating required. You just feel amazing. You know, you just walk away from that experience, knowing that that's available to you, without any fear, without any of the like intense feelings. So, it's like I think all these things, they're it's like all the different colors of the rainbow. They're all there for us to experience if we feel aligned to do it. And someone was saying about recent news about psychedelics and is it unfounded? And I think the thing is we've all been told, whether it's been through religion or if it's about religious things or it's about psychedelics or it's about all sorts of things, we're being told all the time what we should and shouldn't do. And actually, our consciousness and our ability to explore that is our birthright. And astral projection is the next evolutionary step in that journey, because you don't need anything outside of yourself to experience it. And that is really powerful.
that is so true. So true, man. Thanks for sharing that. And I think there's also, we talked about different places that you can go to when it comes to psychedelics. We talked about how you can go to this LSD realms when you're on LSD, and mushroom realms, and DMT realms. You just shared that now. And then there's also, with astral projection, obviously you have the whole universe at your display. You can go anywhere you want. Now, of course, it takes practice. That's the difference. With the psychedelics, you can just buy it, put it in your mouth, you have an experience. And I think for many people, that's how this journey starts. They're like, what the fuck is going on? I cannot
Yeah.
explain this. There's something else going on in the universe than my mind knows, right? It's a good starting point. And that's
Yeah.
how I started. And then I started hearing people talk about that you can actually have experiences without psychedelics. And that was very interesting. And then with this practice, yes, it takes more practice. It doesn't happen necessarily overnight, although it can happen overnight for some people. But it's a, you know, in order to master it, in order to be able to control where you want to go every single time and not just end up in random places and really have control, it takes practice. Yes. But if you do practice and if you put in the work, you will get a lot of rewards for it. And I think we are in this place where, you know, we live in a society where everyone wants this instant gratification. You want to press a button and you want to receive something immediately. We live in that age, right? So a lot of times with astral projection, when you practice a few times and nothing happened, it's easy for people to just kind of give up afterwards because it didn't happen. And that's why it's so important to get help from somebody that can actually guide you on this journey so you don't do it alone. And then another thing that's also really important to talk about is what you touched upon just now, death, talking about death, talking about dying. And when it comes to astral projection, this is also one of those things that you can control and explore. You can explore the afterlife. You can see what's going to come after this life, or you can go and meet somebody that has already passed on, and you can have a conversation with that person. And can you imagine how healing it must be if somebody you love passes on and you're able to actually go and meet them again and reconnect with them and have a conversation that then lets you know that they are safe, that they are not gone, and that you can connect with them if you wanted to by using this tool, astral projection. And that reminds me of one of our students, Rena, who her fiance died in a car accident almost immediately. And yeah, let's just listen to her story.
So I tried it, and first day, nothing. Second day, nothing. I'm following all the prompts. The fourth time that I tried it, I was able to successfully get out of body. And I had been practicing so much with the semi-indirect method that I was comfortable with getting out of my body. And I was able to get out, and I actually reconnected with Michael. Which was a big deal. So what ended up happening was I got out of my body like I normally do. I was able to pull on something to get out. And I pull on something, and I remember, run away from yourself so you don't get sucked back in. So I ran out of my room. This is easy for me now because I've been doing the semi-indirect method. So I'm in my hallway. Now, one thing that I could not get was vision. Like I wanted to see him. And so I commanded vision, like, I want to see. And so nothing happened. And so I'm commanding, like, please, like, let me see. And I asked about 8 times and nothing. So I said, okay, well, it's okay if I can't see. I have other senses right now. But the entire purpose of me doing this is to see Michael. I'm saying this. I'm not just telling you this. I'm saying this in my mind while I'm out of my body. Like the whole point of me doing this is to see you, Michael. Michael, if you're there, I want to see you. I want to feel you. This is the whole reason I got into this program. And immediately when I said that, the room started spinning. So I could feel myself spinning in the hallway, spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. And then eventually I could feel myself sitting on my bed. So I'm like, oh, I'm back on my bed. I was like, okay. And while I was on my bed, I could feel Michael move me. So one of the things that I did not mention in the beginning is that Michael would come to me, like after the car accident, Michael would come to me, and I would know he would come to me because I would allow him to manipulate my body. So during this outer body experience, the same way that Michael would manipulate my body before, he started to manipulate it during this outer body experience. So before, we would use communications like this, or he would move my feet, or he would, this is how we would talk. This is when I'm fully conscious. I wasn't in an outer altered state. I was fully conscious. During this outer body state, though, he was moving my energy body the exact same way. So he was doing this. He would hug. We had this thing where we would say with one another, it's just us. And so he was moving my energy body. I could feel, like, it wasn't my arms. I could feel my energy arms moving, like just us. And I'm like, Michael, is this you? And he did the affirmative, like, yes. I'm like, oh my God, I've been trying so hard to see you. He told me that he loved me. He said he's been watching. And he didn't say it like, I love you. I could understand that that's what he was saying, almost like I could read his mind. Yeah, it was so cool. So I was like, I love you too. And I could feel my energy body crying. I wasn't crying, like it was no tears, but I could feel that crying from joy. I was just so happy. So we talked. He hugged me multiple times. He was just like, it's just so good. And I started to ask him, like, how come I can't see you? You know, what have you been doing? He explained that this is something that I would have to figure out, you know, and stuff like that. So it was a pretty powerful, and I felt like it was long, but it might have only been a few minutes. I didn't check, but it felt like a very long, intense experience. But I knew it was him because before I had communicated with him with my regular body, and he moved my energy body the exact same way. So that was the whole reason. So if the program ended, I had like 3 or 4 more weeks left. If the program ended there, I would have been good because I just wanted to see him. So being able to hold him, hug him tell me he loved me, us write our, you know, just us in the air and just go over some of the things that we used to do when we were here was great.
Wow. Wow. You know, like the first time I saw that, it was like, so hang on, what, sorry, she's just lost someone. Right, that doesn't seem like she's lost someone because she is alive. She is so vibrant. She is literally like, her vibration is through the roof. And I think this is, you know, you can't fake that. That's, you know, like when I see that and you know her story and like part of the longer testimonial, you see the news reports about the car crash and all of that, you know, like she was in intensive care for a month. You know what I mean? She lost her partner instantly. Like she was not a woman who didn't have a difficult journey. She had a difficult journey and she just lost someone. And 4 weeks later, she looks like that. I mean, that's just incredible. You know, and I think this is the thing about death is that like we never know when we're going to die. Death is you know, it's the one thing we can be certain of. And the Buddhists talk about death. What they say is the moment of your death is the most important moment of your life. And the reason they say that is because it's that moment, what you're clinging to, what your consciousness is filled with, is what you take into the next life. So just imagine most people don't really have an understanding of death, you know, because of the world we're living in at the moment, you know, because religion basically screwed everyone over. So everyone got so disillusioned with the religion that people moved over to science, but science became a religion. So that's so closed. It's the same sort of situation. And then gradually, obviously, people are waking up to spirituality, this thing that you essentially can check and test yourself. You know, you don't actually need someone to tell you who to worship or how to approach it or, you know, studies based on everything. You can actually test this for your own experience. You can have your own astral body, out-of-body experience. And when you actually have those experiences and you actually leave the body and you go into the afterlife and maybe you go and meet with someone who has passed over and you do that, what do you think the effect on your life in your moment of death will be? You're not going to be filled with fear. You're not going to have confusion. You're not going to be sitting there going, oh my God, what's going to happen now? Because you've actually been doing it potentially for years, you know? And I think this for me is one of the most important reasons why I practiced astral projection, because in that moment, like I had this amazing experience where I met a guy who got visited by his guides. He had a lot of trauma. He was a Mormon. He had no religious kind of content for his experience, but he actually had his guide come into his bedroom and start removing the trauma from him and then taking him out into these astral experiences. And one of the experiences was showing him the light. And it was showing him that the reincarnation cycle is very mechanical, and that it's almost like a vacuum. So when you die, when you see the light, we're told go towards the light. Well, what he said was that if you go towards the light, you then go into reincarnation. Whereas as an astral projection practitioner, you can actually just not go towards the light and just go into the astral. And then you don't have to forget everything that you've learned in this life. You don't have to go through the amnesia and actually go through reincarnation in that fashion. It doesn't mean you can't come back to this earth, but it's just a different way of approaching it. So for me, that's why I do this. And I think it's a really, for us all to be able to actually practice something that is that important before it happens, I think is just so, so important and valuable.
Yeah, so true. And like one of my teachers says, like we plan in very minute detail when we go on vacation, where we're going to live, what we're going to do and everything about the vacation. But when it comes to the afterlife, which we for sure are going to go there, everybody listening right now, you're all going to die someday, right? Everyone's going to die. Everyone's going to go to the afterlife, right? That's for sure. That's the only thing that's for sure. You're born, you die, for sure. So if you know that, how are you prepared for what's coming afterwards? Are you preparing? Are you thinking about it? I know it's, it feels like it's going to be somewhere in the distance. But if you look at, just like this story with Rena, I'm sure they didn't think about death was going to come that day for her husband, who just died, boom, suddenly, like this hit and run car accident, just out of blue. So like you can't really be prepared when it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen. But are you prepared when it's happening, so you can navigate that space, so you can, so you know how to control, how to move, how to use your intention, your consciousness to travel and explore, and to decide what's going to happen next. I think for the most part, none of us are learning how to do that. There's no school that teaches you that, but we do. We teach you how to have these experiences so that you can take control over this very natural thing that takes place. It's going to take place for sure. So at this point, I would like to do some questions and answers. So if you guys been listening, we've been talking for almost an hour now. And so we're going to do like about 10 minutes of questions and answers. So if you have any questions that you want to ask at this point about maybe astral projection, maybe psychedelics, or anything alike, please put it in the comments field. And that's
so someone said here about research has been done with controlled settings with mushrooms for people with cancer to elevate their anxiety. Most people have connected to the astral level and become more awakened. Yeah, when we're talking about the astral level, I think this is something that is like a really broad term. And when you've actually experienced some of these experiences, when you've had what you could class as a non-drug induced astral projection and then a drug induced astral projection, they're different places most of the time. And we said it's not that you can't potentially meet a dead relative, someone who's passed over on magic mushrooms, or you might not have a visitation from a spirit or something like that. It's just that you're not in control of that experience, and for a lot of the time you're going to different places. Like for example, the magic mushrooms, they're ancient knowledge, so you tend to have a lot of like for example, one of the phenomena is that mushrooms from different areas of the world will give you totally different visuals, and you'll actually be working with totally different spirits. So if you and I've had this, you can have very Mexican type experiences, but I'm not Mexican, or you might have some from Hawaii, and you might have, all depending on, what the lineage of that mushroom is. Like I did a boga, and I had a very African experience where I did actually get out of body, and I ended up in Africa, in a fireplace with like children looking at me. But at no point could I control that experience. I couldn't go, actually, I don't want to go to Africa. I'm more interested in going to Italy, The European trip wasn't available, And I think that's the thing with a lot of these, with just the difference. And, it's not to say that psychedelics can't give you a profound experience. It's just that as someone who's done a lot of them, you do get to a point where you're like, okay, well, how can I actually build on the experiences more consistently, And I think there's a lady in the chat saying that, in the 60s, she'd done a lot of LSD and different things, but she's still not been able to have a conscious astral projection. And I think, for people like that, it shows, obviously, actually being able to have the ability to consciously astrally project, that's really going to serve you throughout your life, because it doesn't matter if you can't get hold of some LSD. It doesn't matter if you're in a place where, legally it's going to be really dangerous to do something like that. No one can, if you're in a prison cell, you can get out of your body. You can get out of that prison cell. Now that's pretty valuable. That's like a get out of free jail card,
Totally. Yeah, I'm reading some of the comments here as well.
Gelatinine helpful, Flo?
Is gelatinine helpful? Yes, for the astral projection practice, it is helpful, because gelatinine, what it basically does, it helps you to stay awake when you get, not like coffee, which also helps you to stay awake, but coffee helps you to stay too awake. You're very active, high pulse. Gelatinine helps you to stay awake just enough so that you are not dipping into deep sleep. It helps you to stay on a more of a lighter sleep, which is very useful for the astral projection practice. So in combination, galantamine with the astral projection practice, I have had seen lots of success for me and other people. But I always advise people to take any supplements after they've tried everything else that you can do naturally. You shouldn't have to rely on any substances if you can do a lot of things naturally. And there's a lot of things that you can do to stay awake. You don't necessarily need galantamine. That's just something you do in the worst case scenario, that you just cannot stay awake because you're just falling asleep every single time.
I don't know. I think I tried gelatinine once. I was doing it for lucid dreaming though, and when I got out, I literally felt like I was in a lucid dream, but on speed. So the experience was, the sound around the experience, like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had that, or if that connects with you.
I haven't had that, but I think it's one of those things that it is again, one of those things that's personal. The way somebody experienced a mushroom trip versus another person having the same mushrooms can vary. And the same with people's astral projection experiences are different, and how people receive the astral projection practice on different things as well. It's very personal. But so I always encourage people to experiment with it. That's what I would say.
Got someone asking about so life is a ride, Bill Hicks. Yeah, that's it. I think and it's just flowing from what Flo was saying. Experimentation. I consider myself a consciousness explorer. I think Flo probably would say the same. And I think that's a really good mindset to have, just to be open to these experiences. And someone's saying here about the press talking very negatively about psychedelics. Why is that?
Is this one?
Yeah.
No, not this one. Where is that?
Yeah, misinformation for sure.
There we go.
Yeah, the thing is, fear in the world is a great way to control people. If people are really empowered and you tell them what to do, the person will turn around to you and go, no, I've got my own ideas. Whereas if everyone's scared and they're like, oh my God, there's a fire, or there's a virus, or there's this or that, people will go, what do I need to do? And then the loudest voice, the government or whoever it is, will just say, you all need to do this, and it will make everything better. But, obviously, look at it in the world. How many times does it really make things better? So I think, there've been a smear campaign against consciousness expansion ever since ever. Before psychedelics were even open to everyone, even in tribal settings, things like magic mushrooms and ayahuasca were usually reserved for the shaman. So the shaman would actually take it to treat and help their tribe and the people who had the illness. Whereas now, what's happening is people who have got the illness are actually taking it themselves, or for whatever reason they want to take it to have their own experience. So, for whatever reason, consciousness and all these types of things have been pushed down, and I think it is ultimately control. Look at the church.
It's definitely control, and it's so sad because, if anything, psychedelics, it's like, for example, mushrooms, LSD, like so many of these experiences are very much about peace and love and the understanding of that you're connected with everybody around you, and all the animals and trees and the whole earth. Like, you have this deep sense of knowing that you're connected, that you're part of the same thing, and it's so sad that they have to scare people away from using something that's going to actually improve relationships between humans, and not. But that's not what they want, right? They don't want people to be one. They don't want us to come together as one and help each other, and because that means that we're going to be against the control systems, right? We're going to come together. They don't want that. So yes, definitely. Definitely, that's the reason. And I would say that's something that's been happening a lot with psychedelics, because it's something that exploded and people could just take it, and it was very straightforward, right? But we will definitely see that more with astral projection now in the near future. I'm sure that the more this becomes out there in the media, the more media will try to make fun of this and say that people are crazy and that they believe this is possible, but it's not. And we're going to see this coming a lot. You'll see.
So the mainstream's always 10 years behind anything. Obviously, just talking about the kind of psychedelics and the kind of the mainstream. Even though the mainstream may be putting out stories, I just say don't watch the news. That's one of the fastest ways to lift your vibration and enter a higher consciousness, because it's like a drum. And it's the drum of trauma and concern, worry, fear, and anxiety. And when you listen to that drum, you synchronize with it. So just don't look at it. And actually, the great news is there's a huge amount of companies coming in doing research commercially, and commercially it has to happen just to get the money behind it and get these things moving, for things like magic mushroom therapy. Ketamine therapy is already available in the US. In the UK, ketamine therapy is available. In the US, in certain states, you can have magic mushroom therapy as well, and MDMA assisted therapy. So these things are coming, and the world is changing. But just don't worry about the fear. We create our reality with our vibration and our intention, and you really get to see this in the astral realm. When you have a negative mindset in the astral, thoughts manifest, reality manifests at the speed of thought. But that's happening here as well. It's just that it's slower because the vibration is more dense. So just focus on the solutions and outcomes that you want to see in the world. That's what I always try and do, and it definitely works.
Yeah, I agree. I have this comment as well. The church is doing this to control people. Yeah, I definitely resonate with that as well, because you see a lot in the community. People talk. There's a lot of this negative spread about how fearful you should be about leaving your body, that you cannot return to the body, even though every projector that's ever done this practice has always been able to return to their body very easily without any problems. Still, there's this like fear that's been spread. Why? Well, so that you don't go out there, so you don't know what's happening. So you're stuck, and you're limited in your perspective, your perception of reality. So that then people can, other people in control can tell you what you should believe. And then you won't be able to know if what they say is right or not, because you haven't been able to yourself to verify the information. And that's why, to me, astral projection is an important evolutionary step for us, because we collectively need to go out there and have experiences, not just me and Matt, but everybody of you guys listening right now, you guys need to go out there and have these experiences and learn for yourself, see things for yourself, and then imagine what that means. Imagine if we lived in a world where people would go out constantly and learn new things about reality and bring that information back to us. Imagine how much quicker we would evolve. It's mind blowing.
There's one comment here. Couldn't these honest experiences of seeing passed away relatives be a simulation of one's subconscious mind simulating responses based on their past knowledge of them, similar to current AI simulations? Well, actually, there's a piece of research that's just come out. It's actually been published in a medical journal. It's the first piece of research of its kind, and it's all around shared crossings. So the phenomena which happens quite regularly, as the research is showing, is that, for example, you might have someone who's in an end-of-life care center. They're going to die maybe in the next month. They know about it. They may be being given painkillers to regulate their pain and obviously help them with these last few moments. And they, for example, let's say they've got a relative. That relative actually isn't in the room. There may be a few states or even in a different country. And the two people will actually report to the nurse the same experience. So, for example, the one having who's obviously on their deathbed, literally, would say something like, "Wow, last night I came out of my body, I went into the light, and I met my husband again, who died 20 years ago, but my daughter was there. It was amazing." And these experiences have been shown to happen up to, I think it was a week, and even up to 3 days after the person's passed. And then what would happen is they would get a phone call in the clinic from the daughter, who'd call up and say, "Is my mother okay? Because I had a really weird dream last night where I was with her and my dad, and I took them into the light." And what they did is they started collecting all this data, and now it's actually been published. And obviously before that, you'd have the running narrative was that the drugs that the person is on or the condition that they've got has caused a degradation of their brain. So now they're hallucinating because there's faulty wiring causing these hallucinations. Now, obviously, for normal people, that seems to make sense. But then how do you relate the experience being a shared experience from someone who wasn't even in the room? They had no contact. They had no idea about either of each other's experiences. And there's a lot of these. These are very common. And if you talk to anyone who works in a center where people die, where they look after dying people, then this is not an uncommon experience. So that's what I'd say to that one there.
Nice. And Tracy, I was sharing something that related to that. Nice. Wow.
So that's it. Yeah, and the one got a call from them. Exactly. That's it. And the shared experiences, the shared crossing, it can be physical. So one of the experiences that was recorded in the journal was around this woman. Her niece, who she had a very close bond with, actually had tried to kill herself with an overdose. And the auntie that night at the exact same time actually rushed to hospital herself. And when the doctors tested her, with all the stuff to see what she was going through, why she was having such extreme symptoms, the only thing they could conclude was that she'd taken an overdose. But this was her auntie, and her auntie had taken nothing. But she'd experienced the same thing. So these, just like you were saying, obviously actually experiencing something being pulled in the middle of the night in your solar plexus, it can be very physical. It's not just kind of dream type stuff either, it's very exciting research, very exciting.
This question, is it possible to ask someone astral projected to help you come out of body through an astral projection? So I'm guessing what you're trying to say here is, can somebody help you to get out of body when they're out of body, like an astral projector coming to pull you out of body? And the answer is everything is possible. Really, like there's few things that are not possible. But the question is that easy? Is that the best way to get out of body? Is it to ask someone to come over to your house and help you get out of body? That's in my experience, that is not very easy. First of all, that person has to find you and get to your place in an infinite universe, right? Find your place and then get you out of body. One of the problems that people have faced when they had to actually do this when they're in the same room. So sometimes, people practice in the same room. One of the person gets out of body and then tries to pull the other person out of body as well. And what's been happening is that even if they're successful, and a lot of times it's not very successful, but if they are successful to somehow help them by holding them or something, which is again difficult. But let's say they manage to pull them out somehow, that person is going to be in a very sleepy kind of rocky state. Unless they're very experienced astral projectors, they're not going to be very conscious. And even if they have an experience in that moment, they most likely not going to remember it. Sometimes they do in the form of dreams. I remember interviewing a guy that is an astral projector, but his wife is not. So his wife doesn't believe in these things. And then he did an experiment one night. He went out of body and he saw her sort of floating above the bed, and he took her hands and he could communicate with her. He's like, come, let's go on an adventure. And then he took her away and they went to Hawaii, some astral version of Hawaii, and then had an interesting experience, came back. The next day, he just woke up and sort of asked her, did you have any interesting dreams? That's the only thing he said. And she's like, dreams? I remember us having dinner on Hawaii. That's weird. That's all I remember. And that was like for him, like confirmation that it worked, Although she wouldn't believe him if he told her, because obviously she didn't believe in all that stuff. So for her, it was just a dream, but for him, it was much more than a dream because he knew that he made that happen. And so that can happen. That people have an experience, they either don't remember that it happened. So if you ask them the next day, do you remember us going there? They'll be like, no, because they're just so sleepy, they're not conscious in the experience. Or they might remember it as a form of a dream. So as a form of like a memory, like a dreamy memory. So that's why, the best way to get out of body is to learn how to get out of body consciously, because you have to first become conscious in that state, so that when you are out of body, you're actually conscious of what's happening. There's no point to be out of body if you're like a zombie, like, ooh. Then you're not going to remember, you're not going to make sense of anything. It's all about being conscious and moving around the space and then coming back consciously to then be able to save that memory and make sense of what actually took place in that experience.
Because we're projecting anyway, we're projecting here right now, it's just that, and we project every night when we go to sleep to different places, just we're not aware of it. We've got one here, Flo. I think this is a good one for you to answer. Can you cover the Guardians of the Threshold?
This one. Sure, Guardians of the Threshold. So it's basically, there's this little thing that takes place for people when they get into the right state, when they got really relaxed, they start to feel maybe vibrations, or they're very close. Suddenly there can be things that can happen, which for the most part can discourage people from actually continuing the practice. And it can be anything. It can be a very intense feeling, but it's usually more like people report hearing a sound, like maybe a voice screaming in your ear, very unpleasant. A voice shouting your name, maybe saying, "Hey, Florentine, it's burning. We have to get out of the house now." And you're like, and what happens is in that moment, you take off your headphones and you're like, what? What's happening? Where is it burning? And then you realize there is no fire. There's nobody saying it. It was all non-physical. And the idea or the understanding of this guarding of the threshold is basically that it's like a safety feature in your subconscious, that is activated when you get close to actually getting out of body, to see if you're ready, see if you can go past that threshold. Can you ignore that voice saying it's burning and continue with the practice and then get out of body? Or will you be afraid and scared and stop? If you are afraid and you stop, it means that you're not really ready for the experiences. You're not there yet. And I know I went through that myself. I had experiences where I was practicing and suddenly I just heard loads of voices, like people hanging out in my room, as if someone just, like a group of people just came in my room and were just having conversation. And a lot of times I would like stand up and like, who's in my room? And there will be nobody there. So in the beginning, it's common that you're fooled by these situations. And then, you know, you make a decision that, okay, next time I'm get there, I'm not going to fall for it again. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going no matter what voices I hear. I'm not going to trust these voices. They're just trying to discourage me from getting out of body. I'm going to push through. And then you push through and you pass it. And then it stops, actually.
Yeah, I had that very similar experience recently, where it felt like my astral body was trying to come through my teeth, and I was like, it was painful, you know. I was like, hang on a minute, like, what's going on? I was like, why are my teeth hurting? Like, it literally felt like my teeth were going to fall out of my face, like being pushed forcibly. And then I was like, hang on, Matt, you're practicing your astral projection. This is the vibrational state. And as soon as I realized it, boom, popped out. No more pain. But it was as real as anything, you know. And I think it is exactly that, you know. It comes in many different forms. Someone said, how can that be removed from the subconscious? I think, you know, the thing is, obviously, by practicing and just getting more confident, but also, you know, if you were, you know, people that join the course, the first week of the course is all dedicated to mindset, and obviously getting your subconscious on board through a series of different things that we do with you is really important, because that's, you know, your subconscious literally makes up your reality. Our conscious mind is able to process, I think it's something like 8 bits of information a second, whereas our subconscious is like 8,000 bits of information a second. Now, the amounts might be not totally correct there, so don't quote me on that. But the range and the ratio is the same. You know, our conscious mind is very limited, but our subconscious is running the show. So it's really important to get your subconscious on board when you start practicing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what's happening a lot of times for people when they do this practice, and in life in general. But it's one of those things that always comes up with this practice, because if you have any subconscious limiting beliefs, and limiting belief can be a fear, but it can also be something like that you think you're not good enough, or whatever. It can be anything from your childhood, all of these limiting beliefs and all of these fears. And it can also be fears that you think you don't have. You know, it can be things like, oh, I'm not afraid of having out of body experience. I can do it. I want to do it. But then if you actually go deep inside your subconscious and you realize, oh, there's actually quite a few fears there that I haven't been aware of before. And then they start coming up when you're going through this practice. That's why these voices come on, because there's something that's not out of sync. You want to get out of body, but at the same time, there's a subconscious fear that if you get out of body, maybe you won't be able to return, or maybe a monster is going to eat you or something. And so if you have that fear, as soon as you get into this realm of the subconscious, where the conscious mind is no longer active, now you're getting into this very deep state where your subconscious mind is now ruling the show. If you have some fears, then those are going to come up and disturb you. They'll be like, hey, monsters, or or sounds, or whatever it is going to scare you. So you're going to be like, oh my God, I didn't know I had fears. And then, so, you know, in our program, what we do is we work on that. And if it's, depending on how strong this fear is, we can even work on that with our hypnotherapists and our healers, which will take you really, really deep into your subconscious and find out, you know, what is it that stops you when you get close. You get into vibrational state, you're able to get there, congratulations, but then you just cannot get out. There's something holding you back. What's going on? You don't know what that is. Your subconscious knows. And then our hypnotherapists can actually help you to find out what that is and resolve it. And then you're able to start having your astral projections without all these blockages that are in the way. And this is one of those things that's so crucial, but I don't know anybody in the world that does this. We're the only one that actually understands the importance of the subconscious mind in this practice, that we created a service within our program to help people with this, because you cannot get a body if your subconscious mind isn't on the same page as you. You have to be one. You have to be in understanding. It's a relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind that has to be solid.
I've got another one up here, Flo. Do you find things like diet, additives, sugar, dairy, etc., and fluoride in water affect the ability to project?
Can you show that one?
Can't click
Or is
it.
it?
It's kind of just up a little bit.
Up a little bit. Okay.
I think diet, you know, when you're practicing, having a light diet, and obviously, you know, sugar is a drug. So, you know, like it is a really damaging drug to your microbiome. And your microbiome creates serotonin, which is your feel-good chemical, your daytime hormone. You know, sugar is a really damaging thing. I don't have sugar in my diet. You know, it's not to say, you know, like it's not to say that you can't project without it, but I think, you know, as you get on a path of wanting a cleaner, happier life, things like the news, sugar, dairy, meat, all those types of things, they have a certain vibration. And for me, I don't have those. So, you know, and fluoride in water, obviously fluoride, you know, is a neurotoxin. So, you know, it's not great. Obviously, you know, consciousness is the most powerful thing there is. So I'd say nothing is going to stop you if you put the work and energy and commitment in. But obviously, things might make it, you know, reducing things like that, that we kind of have an understanding of, you know, the damage that is happening to us. Reducing that is going to help you. But what do you think, Chloe?
I agree with you, and that's true. And it's also in the community. There's also the problem is that sometimes these things can become a belief system as well. So if you believe that sugar will stop you from getting out of body, then that belief system will actually stop you from getting out of body more than the sugar. So it's very important to keep yourself open to all possibilities and not limit yourself to certain things. I know that's the case with, for example, being vegan, vegetarian, or meat eaters. That's a conversation as well. Like, well, which diet is better? And you know, some people will say, well, you cannot get a body if you eat meat, or and some people actually say that they stopped eating meat and they couldn't get a body anymore because they had no energy. They were just falling asleep. It's really, what I found is that it's very personal. What works for somebody doesn't necessarily have to work for somebody else, and it all comes down to experimentation. And I always like when I see students do that. They have an idea that maybe they're having too much coffee or they have too much sugar. So they just stop for a few weeks. They don't do sugar, they don't do coffee, let's say, and they do the practice and they see what's happening. Is it going better or is it going worse? And then you just make a decision from that point on, because it's personal.
Yeah. Don't limit yourself with you know, limiting ideas. I totally agree with that. You know, make your own choices and experiment.
Yes. All right. Okay. We kind of reached the end now. We've been going on for 1.5 hours, even longer than I was planning. But this has been fun. We're actually going to do another part 2 to this, because we have a lot more to say about these things, a lot more experiences to share as well. So in a few weeks' time, we will come back and have another one of these workshops. And so make sure to not miss out on that. And for now, you know, if you guys want to find out more about the program, then make sure to click the link and book a call with us so we can talk about how we can make this possible for you, how you can finally learn to astral project. And that's it. Do you want to say anything else, Matt?
Yeah, just thanks for all the questions, guys. I mean, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you all. Obviously, I can see that you're all really interested in this stuff. You know, keep exploring. Come and chat to us. You know, if you are interested in taking it to the next level, I'd love to talk to you. you know, and yeah, we can find ways to make that happen for you.
If you would like to find out more information about our Astral Projection program, then please click the link below and visit our website. Here you can watch our free Astral Projection training video, our student stories, and also book a free discovery call with us. During this call, we will discover where you are at with the practice right now and where you would like to be in the future, and then create a plan of action of actually making that a reality for you. So we're looking forward to be speaking to you soon.